All right, we are here with a 2018 Atlas, Volkswagen Atlas, and it is an SE version, and we are going to show you how to do the rear brakes. To start off, this is just a do-it-yourself kind of job. I'm not a professional, but trying to save a few dollars to put my own brakes on so it doesn't have to go to the shop. Some of the tools you're going to need, a tool to remove your lug nuts or your lug nut caps. You're going to need a 7mm hex. You're going to need a 14mm triple square. You're going to need a T30. You're going to need a ratcheting 6 or 8mm wrench, 3/8 drive ratchet, screwdriver, flathead, mini sledge, and probably the most important part is you are going to need an electronic brake service tool. I bought this online for about $150, but I figured if I change the brakes 2 to 3 times on this vehicle, it'll pay for itself, and possibly the next vehicle I buy, it could also be used for that vehicle as well. If not, I could sell it online. The other thing that you're going to need, obviously, rotors, brake pads, and some anti-seize. So we're going to get going here. First thing you want to do is pop off your lugs caps. These are just decoration, and your lug bolts are underneath it there. To get those off, before you jack your vehicle up, loosen them, just crack them loose. And if you can see, I put tape on this socket so that way there it doesn't nick up the finish on the wheels and knock the clear coat off. Once you do that, jack your vehicle up. Place a jack stand under the car. You jack it up a little bit more. There you go. Now, it's important that you lower this back down on that jack stand just to take a little bit of pressure. On there?
Maybe I have to go down a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Oh, yeah, there we go.
Good?
Yep.
All right. The other thing you want to do is up front, you want to chalk your tires either with a wheel chalk or some bricks or something like that, because you're going to have to release the emergency brake. There's 5 lug bolts. They're not lug nuts like on most vehicles. These are lug bolts. Put those aside. You're going to need to use one of these when you beat your rotor off so when it doesn't fall on the ground or hit you in the foot. Now what you need to do is go in and we're going to use our service tool. These are about $150 online. What you want to do, take your OBD2 sensor or connector, plug it in up underneath the dash, push it in there hard. As you see, that powers it on. Now what you want to do is follow the instructions. So it says electronic parking brake, that's your middle one. Click over, click on OK. This is a European car. Scroll down to Volkswagen, click on OK. Now we want to do the electronic parking brake, so that's the second one down. We want to hit replace the brakes, which is OK, and it says replace brake pads operating guide, and you click on OK, and it will walk you through this. Okay, it says there's no communication between the tester and the control unit. So what I need to do is, without my foot being on the brake, I need to take and hit the start button. Or if you have a key, you would want to put your car in the on position. Then I can go back, replace brake pads, hit it again, and it'll diagnose the system. Click on OK. It says please release the parking brake. In order to do that, you have to put your foot on the brake. And this is why we chalked the wheels in front. Release the parking brake. As you can, I'm going to put it back on right now so you can hear the difference. I don't know if the audio will pick that up, but what it is there's a servo motor that pushes the pads against the rotor in the rear of the car. So when you push on this, it's going to move a wee little bit, but in order to actually replace the brake pads, it has to retract all the way out. So that's what this tool is actually going to do. So we released it. We click on OK. I'm not sure if you can hear that on the audio, but it took probably 10 to 15 seconds to release that servo motor all the way out. So now what we're going to, once you get to this point here, you can turn your ignition off, and when we're done, we'll come back in and turn the ignition black on and click OK, and it will reposition the brake pads against the rotor. You can lay this aside. Now, in order to get your caliper off of your vehicle, there's two caps that cover the bolts, two plastic caps. If you might need a screwdriver, I just pulled that one off by hand though, and then there's a second one on the bottom. This is where you need a ratcheting wrench. The reason you need that is because you actually have to stick this is what I found worked for me. You need to stick it onto the ratchet, onto the socket, because it's hard to get in here. There's very little room between the frame of the vehicle and to get a socket in here. So in order to get this in, take off your top bolt, kind of push your brake line out of the way a little bit. Now, I'll show you don't have to pull these out, but I'll show you what it is. This is just your pin that holds your caliper to the caliper bracket. And there's also one on the bottom. But there's zero room to get a ratchet in here, so this is what I found worked for me. If you look, I'm not sure if the camera's picking it up, but if you look at the distance between here to try to get that in, it's almost next to nothing. There we go. Once it gets so loose, you can turn it off by hand. And that should release it. Might need to push it out with a screwdriver or something. There it goes. There it is. So you have your top and bottom pins. Now your caliper should come off, but before you do that, I found it easier on the other side to remove your Okay, at this point here, you're going to disconnect this cable. This is an anti-lock brake sensor. To do that, you want to take a screwdriver, just kind of push it in there like so, and then pop it off. Then come up here and pop this out of the bracket. Kind of put it aside. I won't lie to you, on the other side, it probably took me 25 minutes to get the two caliper bracket bolts off. It's not easy. They're in a very difficult place. I'm going to show you how to get to them. I had to use a breaker bar to actually get them to release, but that's where you need your 14mm triple square socket. I actually bought one just at the local O'Reilly's auto parts store, but they're not real easy to get to. At that point there's a little clip here. If you look, try to pay attention to how it's installed, because it has to be put back on in the exact same order that you took it off. So there we go. Now, as you can see, the reason we're replacing these is the rotors are shot and the brake pads are shot as well. So we're going to pull this back off of there, and then we can just lay it up on the frame of the vehicle there. For now, your brake pads can be pulled out. The front, the one facing you, as you can see, just a regular brake pad, but the rear one facing the inside of the vehicle has a spring on the back, so just kind of pay attention to that when you put your new pads back on. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky. It's going to be very hard to see. I'm going to take the camera here, but if you look at this bolt right here, that's your triple square. There's one there, and then there's actually one that you can't see, so you have to kind of feel for it. It's up underneath, inside of here where my finger is right here. You have to put it on there and kind of work it out. But I'll give you kind of a quick demonstration on how you do it. I took a breaker bar, and then we're going to cut the video for a minute just so that I have a minute to, it takes a little bit of time to get these out, so I won't waste your time with it. But if you see, you're able to sneak in from underneath, and you can grab on there. I don't know if it's you can see it very easily. I'll grab the camera for a minute. See how I'm on there right now. Now all you got to do is break that one loose. You're going to have to continue to take it in and out. You can't really get I wasn't able to get a ratchet in there, so this is what worked for me. It takes a little bit of time, but same thing on the bottom. If you pull it off there, the other one's down in here, and I'm on there now, and you'll break that one loose. So we'll take a break here. I'll spin these out, and we'll reconvene. Okay, so what we did is we loosened those bolts. Once you break them loose, they're not real hard to get out. You can get them out by hand. I'll kind of show you here. You can see in there. You can twist them out by hand once you break them loose, and then that removes your caliper bracket. They're pretty long bolts. I'll pull it all the way out here so that you can see it. But it's definitely not easy to get in here. And then that's the bolt that's holding your caliper bracket on. That can be taken over and cleaned up on the bench. While we're here, I'll just kind of show you this caliper and the importance of the brake service tool. This is your motor that retracts this, that pushes this piston out. And as the brake pads wear down, it remembers the last place that it grabbed. So it actually has to retract this entire piston back through this entire motor so that you can push your piston back into, on your caliper here. If you don't do that and you try to just push this in, you're probably going to break this motor. So just kind of remember that. We'll push that piston in here in a little bit, but we're going to clean up the caliper bracket. Okay. All right, now we're over here. Just brought it over to the bench, just make it a little bit easier to work on. But this is your caliper bracket, and as you can see, it's starting to develop a little bit of rust from the salt and corrosion. But what we're going to do is just take a wire brush and clean that off. This will actually make your brakes last, it's going to determine whether your brakes last 10,000 miles or they last 40,000 miles. Because if your brakes get stuck in here and they can't move back and forth, that was actually backwards, sorry. If they can't move back and forth and slide freely on these, then they get stuck against the rotor, or they get stuck inside of the caliper bracket and they don't move, and it makes the rotor rust. Kind of like probably the reason that we're actually replacing these so early. There's about 30,000 miles on the vehicle. But I think a big part of why they did this is because the car hasn't been driven as much as it normally was because of COVID-19. So you're going to clean these up as best you can. That's just a little bit of brake cleaner, that's all. If you think you did it too much, do it a little bit more, so that those brake pads slide freely inside of that bracket. Okay, now we're able to go back and take the old rotor off, install the new one, and that's it. Okay, we're back here at the vehicle. A couple things need to happen before we reinstall the new brakes. We have to replace this rotor. Obviously, it's shot. And we also have to push this piston back on the caliper. I was actually going to go run and grab a piston tool to push that back, or a caliper tool to push it back, because I don't like to push on this plastic thing with a C-clamp. That's normally what I use. But after I put it on the opposite side, it actually pushes in with almost little to no force. So I'm going to try this one. If it doesn't, I'm going to go get a piston tool. No, I have very little pressure on it, so it's pushing back very, very, very easily, as you can see. But if you didn't have that electronic service tool, you wouldn't be able to push that piston back at all, and you'd break your motor. So So that pushed back extremely easily. I wasn't too worried about cracking the plastic on the back side of that. But obviously if you have a tool to do that, I would use it. I don't, so that's why I didn't get it. I'm going to lay that back up there. The next thing you're going to need is T30 torque, just to take these aren't in there very tight, just to take the bolt that holds the rotor to the vehicle. It doesn't actually hold it, it just holds it in place. The wheel holds it. So that comes out, and now time to pop it off. But before you do that, just thread in one of your lug bolts. Just keeps this thing from falling on the ground and hitting yourself. So hand tighten that. Grab your mini sledge. That pops it loose. Untighten your lug bolt. And pull your rotor off and discard it. As you can see, it's definitely shot. Now what you want to do, I'm going to clean up just some of the rust on there, and also the only reason I'm doing this, next time I need to put brakes on, it'll just make it a little bit easier. And I'm sure I'll have to put brakes on it at least one more time. Depends on how long I keep it, I guess. So we'll do that there. And then I also like to grab a little bit of anti-seize. Try to keep it out of your lug bolt holes. Those aren't really supposed to be anti-seized, you know. And then just put a little bit around the outside where the rotor usually catches. And then it makes it a lot easier the next time you have to take those off. There we go. We'll take our new rotor. Okay, you got to line up your screw here to obviously to where we took it off earlier. So put that on like so. Line that up. Hopefully it holds there for a second. I'm going to take a little bit of this extra anti-seize and just put it on the tip of that. We don't want that to seize the next time, and it really doesn't do anything but hold this on while we're trying to put the brakes on. They are very small though. Kind of a pain to get in there, so let me grab this here. Try to tighten it in by hand so we can grab it. There it goes. And you don't need to tighten this on with extreme force. Nice and easy, because we want it to come off later. There we go. Okay, next thing we can do is reinstall our caliper bracket. And this is where it gets tricky again. Remember, these big bolts, we have to get back in there, and they're pretty hidden, especially the bottom one. The top one you can see. I haven't yet feasted my eyes on the bottom one. You can't really see it at all, so I'm going to put this in there like so. And try to start it by hand. There's the top one, and then we'll do the bottom one. And while I turn these in, there's no difference. It just takes time to get them in and out of there because they're in an awkward spot. We'll take a quick break. Okay, we're back here now. We got the caliper bracket back on. We're able to tighten those bolts in. Again, it's just a 14mm triple square to get those on. I guess if you're on a lift, you'd probably be able to see the bottom bolt, but short of laying on my back, I just kind of felt around for it and was able to get the caliper bracket back on it. I'm not gonna lie, they're not real easy to do. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna take a little bit of ceramic brake parts lubricant, and I'm just gonna lubricate these slides a little bit. Keep it off the rotor though, you don't want it on there. Get your top and your bottom right where your brake pads are gonna hit. Do the back side too. And it just allows those brakes to slide around a little bit easier so that they don't seize up. There we go. Now, let me get a rag here. I had a rag. Maybe I don't. Just kind of get this stuff off my finger there. All right. Now, the brake pad that does not have the spring, this is the one that is closest to the outside of the vehicle. So this one goes here. And as you can see, that's slid in there nice and easy. That's what you want. If you have to use any sort of force, you need to take that bracket back off, which is not going to be fun, and re-clean it. And do the same thing with the rear one. And that one slides nice and easy. Now it's time to put your caliper back on. To do so, remember we got these 2 bolts. Those are held on with a 7mm hex. And remember, this is what worked for me. I'm sure there's different solutions to this, but I put this on here. This will go in, and you're able to turn it. There's zero clearance on, especially the bottom one, to put a ratchet on it. And it's a 3/8 ratchet, so it's a little bit bigger than a 1/4. That's just what I had. So I'm going to take my caliper off of my frame here. Brakes wanting to fall out. There we go. There we go. Remember, we got this here. We got to reroute back up and over. Remember, we pushed in our piston. We can now slide this on top. Like so. Now, because of that spring that's on that rear pad, or not the rear pad, but the inside pad, it makes it difficult to put these back in because it's pushing on that. The pad's pushing against the caliper, so you kind of have to. You got to work with it a little bit. I did the top over on the other side first, and you have to sneak this in. Whoops! I gotta get this on there. But it's definitely not easy. On the top, you got a brake line in the way, and on the bottom, you got the. You can't get anything in there. So let's see if I can get this in there. Maybe start it by hand first. There we go. There we go, the top one started. Now I'm going to put this on here. Don't snug the top all the way up until you get the bottom one started as well. Makes it a lot easier. Put this on. There we go. There we go. All right, I'm going to go to the bottom now. While that's still loose, slide the bottom pin in. Try to line that up and see if you can actually kind of look down here, and you can see just in this hole here. Let me see if I can get you a good picture. You can kind of look in there and get yourself lined up, but it makes it difficult because if you can see the spring on the brake, it pushes against it, so you kind of have to push in on the caliper and also try to get that bolt lined up. So let me get that lined up and we'll get right back with you here.
Stop it.
Yeah, you can. Okay, we got that lined up, so you can take this bottom one now, and if you can see here, there's zero clearance there almost, so that's why we're using this ratchet technique here. I don't know if it's the patented way to do it, but it's the way I developed. Works for me. At least, there we go. And I'll just go ahead and tighten that in. Alright, there's the bottom. We're going to go to the top. Got to push the brake line out of the way a little bit. There we go. And we'll tighten the top. There we go. Okay. Now, two plastic caps that you took off in the beginning, those can be pushed back in. All that does is keep the dirt and crud out of those holes and allows those pins so that they don't get full of dirt. And now the next thing you need to do is you're going to put this back on. I don't know if there's an easier way. I kind of struggled with the one next on the other side, but basically, there it is. That one went in easier. Okay, make sure that those are in nice, and that's going to hold that together. And now we got to reconnect our anti-lock brake sensor. So you have this situation up here at the top. That's just going to get pushed in like so. And then you have your clip at the bottom. That just goes in. All it is just a little clip. And that just gets pushed in until it snaps. You'll hear it click. There it is. Other than that, we're ready to go back inside the car and show you how to redo the electronic brake. Okay, we're back in here with our electronic brake service tool. This is an Autel, A-U-T-E-L, EBS 301. Right now it said when we left the vehicle, it said turn the switch off, replace the brake pads, and finish the installation. Now, opposite of that, it's going to say now that we're done, we can turn the ignition switch on. Now, to do this, don't put your foot on the brake because it's going to start your vehicle. You just want the electric to hit everything that it needs to hit. So put it in the on position. If you have a key, just put your key in and switch it to the on position. So we're going to click on that. Once we get going here, we're going to go over here and we're going to click on OK. Shut the air off on the vehicle so to see if you can hear. There we go. Now let's see if you can hear it. I don't know if the audio will pick it up. Now it says now it's went through its thing. It pushed the brake back on. It pushed that servo motor, pushed the caliper, and pushed the brake pads back against the rotor. Now it says please apply the parking brake, so we can click up on that, and that's it. Now you can click on OK, and rear brake pad replacement is completed. And we click on OK. And now we can shut our ignition off and disconnect our OBD2 sensor. There we go. And that depowers it. And we put this back in the box. That's $150 to do that. But it's also cheaper than taking it to the Volkswagen dealer to replace your brakes.